This is actually a great replication of the visibility in a real life race car. He squeezes them out a little wide, gets close to the barriers, but pulls it off. You can tell that this driver actually did not have a proper throttle application. See, that's a big understeer. He's given a lot of wheel input, then a snap oversteer on the end. Hey Gamologist, it's Chris Nunes, professional race car driver from Mazda Motorsports. And today on Experts React, we're gonna be looking at some footage from Automobilista 2. Let's jump right into it. All right, so first off, we're gonna check out the BMW 2002 Turbo. I'm excited to see this car. This is pretty much a full-blown race car. It's pretty sweet to see it. And the car looks free. These tires most likely shouldn't be, depending if it's DOT slick or if it's a full-blown racing slick or if he's just on streets. It looks like the car's driving on streets. So when we go from a third-person camera following the car, we'll be able to see what tires they're actually on. He's on street tires, so that's why the car looked free like what we're seeing. I guarantee there will be some different tire options we can run depending on the class for the game. The graphics look relatively good. Not as good as a lot of racing games on the market. I do feel like we're trying to get more of a simulation experience out of this game. I don't even necessarily feel comfortable calling this a game. It's more of a sim. This is a simulator. We are trying to replicate real racing circuits. We're trying to replicate real racing cars and try to attain a realistic driving experience through this simulator. So I'll probably be referring to it as a simulator throughout the rest of this video. Obviously, I mean, look at the car looks pretty stunning. I'm really intrigued to see how this car will perform on track, so let's check it out right now. The curbing on this game really looks awesome. That's characteristic a lot of racing games will lack, is actual good curbing. As a race car driver, we use curbing a lot to get rotation out of the car. So if the car is understeering on entry, we run over the curbing to get rotation out of it, and it's important that these simulators have good curbing to help us race car drivers prepare for events by actually getting a good feel out of curbing, where we can use curbs, where we can't. And these curbs in this game, let me tell you, pretty sweet. And this is a vintage class, so we do have some other older cars, relatively slower car, 200 horsepower in the car. So this would be similar to like an old spec Miata class. So this car actually right here, the way this car sits, this car would actually be street legal. It's hard to tell if we have a roll cage in the car. We can have a roll caged daily driver street car, no problem. These cars aren't fully gutted. They still have headlights. Most likely they're still running a catalytic converter in the cars. This car right here, as we see it, still stock gauges, everything. I guarantee you for this class in the game, obviously all the lights and indicators would need to work. So this car, as it is, we're seeing right now in this gameplay, totally be street legal, which is pretty cool. This would be a pretty good driving street car for any viewers out there. And the graphics in this game really aren't that bad. Looking at the sky and everything, looking at all the runoff space off the track. Look at, we have some grass coming up where that one driver looks like 3 cars ahead, dipped 2 tires off. It looks relatively awesome as far as simulator goes. It looks pretty similar to iRacing as far as graphics go, maybe even a step up from that. So I'm really curious to see how the car handles when he's out of traffic and able to actually run a proper racing line. He got a horrible drive off because the slower traffic he had to pass. So the bot drivers, they are a little bit twitchy when you're overtaking them. It's a little weird twitch coming off. It's a little odd. So now they have dynamic weather. Obviously, he's starting to lead into that. He's mentioning some rain coming in. So we do race through rain. We actually get to see how the curbing impact the handling of a car. So we come in, we're actually gonna touch this curbing on the inside right here. Watch his hands. The car actually gets free. It gets rotation out of the car. So that's what I was mentioning earlier. And I really enjoy seeing that the curbing does work in this game. It's really cool. Now that we get some water coming onto the track. In my racing, in MX5 Cup and IMSA, if we have some water starting to come on track, we have sprint races, so they're 45 minutes. So as we get water on the track, they will actually red flag it. Everyone will go to their pit boxes and we'll actually switch to rain tires. I really like that the grip is starting to deviate from the initial high grip surface we had, especially when the rain is starting to pick up. We can see if we pay attention to the hands on the steering wheel, we can see more understeer or more oversteer coming out of the car, which is really cool to see. See, that's a big understeer. He's giving a lot of wheel input, then a snap oversteer on the end. Oh yeah, this dynamic weather is good.
Track gets wet too as your tires go bone cold.
So as you can hear him mentioning, the tires do get cold when it begins to rain. So this is most likely the science behind why the car is doing this in the simulator, is due to not only there being water on the track with street tires while you're trying to race, but the actual tire itself is cooling. The tire grip and heat we get in our tires actually comes from our brakes.
It's still not wet. You quite see it yet. It'll get reflective.
So the gamer here is actually saying the track will actually get reflective, which is pretty cool. In real life, when it begins to rain, if you're familiar with the track, it's a very low grip track. When it starts to rain, you look for those shiny spots he was mentioning, and you do not drive on that. So now we can see there's a little more standing water on the track from this overview. You can see a little bit of roost getting thrown up from the tires. That's awesome. I know a lot of racing simulators do incorporate that, but I'm really glad they kept it in this game. Just so that way when you're coming up on traffic like he's doing right now, it should start getting some spray on the windshield, which it does. That's awesome to see. Apart from the car's handling, if we kind of bounce back to the graphics once again, it looks awesome. You can see in the sky, one half is darker, one half's brighter. You can see that's where the sun's setting. This track in real life will definitely get darker and shaded as it is due to the fact that the sun is setting and we're kind of in this valley. So they kind of nailed that perfectly. This is actually a great replication of the visibility in a real life race car. It all looks awesome. Something I want to mention, he just touched the curbing in the rain. In real life, if we did that, the car would totally spin out. Definitely cannot touch the curbing. And if you do, it just snaps on you. The racing car setups do not like wet curbing at all. That could be something that's not necessarily completely correct to real life. He's doing good. His racing lines are relatively on point also if we check it out. Here's a little free coaching portion of the day. We can't quite see where the track is glossy. His racing lines are relatively good.
Starting to get very dark then.
Yeah, so as he just mentioned, the track is starting to get very dark now. Pretty interesting to see that. I don't know if this is necessarily quite realistic, especially at a bigger racing event. We would have a lot of lighting on the track. We wouldn't be relying as heavily on the headlights to illuminate the course as we're seeing here. So I'm not sure if he actually touched the curbing, but that is what will happen in real life if you touch curbing. You'll get that snap. So you see it started to slide to the right, he corrected, went to the left, and a big snap the other direction. That is very common to see. All right, sweet. So now we're switching to an old school Formula One car. This would be interesting to check out. The cars look awesome. They look really cool. These cars were definitely not safe. These, you would be pretty lucky if you survived at the end of the season. I'm glad I'm not a racing driver from these times. I'm much happier to be in a sports car with a cage and full fire equipment. Oh yeah, it looks realistic. This is cool. The tires are cold. As we can obviously see, there's obviously not much downforce being put on the car at a low speed, so that's why we can see it break away. F1 2021 is pretty good at replicating that too. Yeah, they really get bottlenecked up a little bit through here. There is some relatively good mechanical grip on these cars. If we look at the tires, we're getting a lot of grip. However, if we compare these cars to a modern day F1 car, there's not going to be as much active aerodynamics to the car delivering the downforce. So that's why as we're watching him drive, this car is going to be freer compared to Max Verstappen's 2021 Formula One car. It's just not going to have as much grip, even though these tires obviously look massive. These cars still have a lot of horsepower, and without that downforce being generated from the bodywork, we're just not going to get that grip. And this game is replicating that pretty dang well, so it's really cool to see that. He squeezes them out a little wide, gets close to the barriers, but pulls it off. You can tell that this driver actually did not have a proper throttle application. In real life, we would get our braking done, which is called our braking zone. We then get off gas and brake, let the car roll to the apex, so that way the weight of the car settles out, and then we apply power. We can have throttle maintenance where we'll hold the throttle in one spot, continue to roll it on, wherever we see some throttle chops in his driving. And you can actually see the weight distribution of the car shifting to the front and the back. Comes the throttle, you can see the car jerking a little bit through there. That's super cool that they're actually incorporating this, because then you can work on your braking zones, your throttle application, everything, and apply that to real life racing or driving in general for autocross or other cool things like that. Wow, these graphics absolutely look stunning. For a street circuit, this looks awesome. I really like the cement patches they have also, as well as the asphalt. It really replicates this course. And I like how the mirrors are usable in this game. That's something that's a very useful tool while we're actually racing, is obviously being able to use our mirrors. Without being able to move our head, there's very little head movement inside race cars. Obviously, this is a Formula car, but if we hopped in Porsche Cayman GT4 Club Sport race car, you would only be able to move your head about this much with a Hans device on. So with the mirrors actually being placed proper, so you don't need to move your head a bunch, that's actually a great simulation tool, and I really like to see that. This is awesome. And the AI, however he has this set up, they are pretty good. They are better than what we saw in that 2001 BMW Turbo compared to these cars. They're a lot smoother, especially while you're overtaking. They're not as jerky. And they do race you, which almost seems like you're actually racing. They can squeeze you out to the wall on entry to get a better drive through the inside, or you can hold them down and they try to push you out. It looks way better than what we saw with the BMW. I'm not sure if that's just how it is with their Formula cars or if that is also in the sports cars. So we'll continue to check it out as we go all along, but I just wanted to make a point. The bought cars do look significantly better than the BMWs do on a dry circuit. Looks really good. I like this camera's perspective too. It looks like the resolution might be a little lower from this angle. No, that looks pretty realistic. It looks good. For a simulation game, I'm pretty impressed. It's almost like they combined the best of Assetto Corsa and iRacing together. So they took some of the graphics from Assetto, some of the car dynamics from iRacing, and kind of applied it all into one, which honestly, it's pretty brilliant. We're in a sports car now, which is my cup of tea, so I'm super excited to check this out. This is a Porsche race car. This looks awesome being in the cockpit. So let's see how this thing drives. This car has phenomenal ABS, so we should be able to get some good temperature in the tires in this car with it raining, just because we can just get on the brakes still hard and the ABS should still activate pretty well. Wow, that AI car dove up the inside. That is crazy. They're very aggressive. They got the interior designed perfectly. We can see that beautiful racing display. We can see we're in 4th gear. We can see our RPMs. We can see our speed. It looks awesome. We can see our pit speed limiter, application point, obviously running paddle shifters with that sequential gearbox. This thing is replicated nice. Super similar to what we would see in iRacing.
I went to the 3rd lap though, so
now, I believe he should be on rain tires by the way the car is driving, so I'd be curious to see. He might be on slicks, because as he went over that water buildup there, it did get a little free. We're able to see a lot of the water buildup sitting on the track now that the storm has kind of gone by, and it looks ultra realistic. And we can really see that gloss the other driver in the BMW was talking about. It sits on the track, especially as we come around some of these up and coming corners, such as right here. We can see all that standing water. You're able to really see a glossy portion of the track towards the left. This would be a great training tool, as I mentioned before. If you're a professional race car driver or you're an enthusiast trying to get into the sport, you're gonna learn a ton of great driving characteristics to apply towards the real driving with the simulator. They have got so much right with it. So the dynamic weather is really cool. Now we can see it's starting to dry up. We have a few puddles in some areas. It looks like the racing line might be completely dried up. It's relatively, we can still see a little bit of puddle with the banking of the corner in between the curbing, which is very realistic. That's typically where water tends to stand the longest on a real racing course.
These guys are having a bit of a wrestle up ahead. Maybe we can capitalize on that.
So now, as he mentioned, these two drivers in front of them are actually going to be going slower as they are racing. That lead car is going to have to be defending to not let that other driver overtake, and it's allowing him to then catch up. So now we have a 3-car battle. It'll make it a little more interesting. Let's see if he happens to touch any curbing while it's wet, if anyone will make any mistakes.
For dry tires, maybe in the next couple of laps. That'd be interesting to see.
And he just mentioned switching over to dry tires. So they were on rain. You can see they're running on that rubber buildup line right now. And those rain tires are taking it pretty well, as expected from a GTD or GTLM class, which we're racing right now. These rain tires are just awesome. I'm really curious to see if he pits to switch over to dry racing slicks. I'd be really curious. We'll see what happens as he goes along. So he really overslowed that corner. His minimum roll speed was way down, but he is most likely used to it being very low grip and the car being very free wanting to rotate on power. So now that the track's drying, that's when your driving really has to adapt quickly. And that's what he's starting to figure out right now is, oh, okay, I can carry more speed now that the track's starting to dry up. Obviously, for this being a sports car, we can't really use the mirrors much. The head movement on the car is hard to look at the mirrors, but I do like the way the driver is sitting in the cockpit. It's easy to look ahead, and I really like that it's easy to see far ahead on the course. A lot of games, I feel like the depth perception is a little off in the actual simulation portion of it, where this, I feel like for how far ahead a racing driver's eyes look, I can actually look relatively to where I would need to look in real life, which is important for me. While I'm playing iRacing, let's say I'm training for the Rolex 24-hour coming up, I need to visually be able to look way ahead. When I'm going through one corner, I'm already looking at the apex of the next corner. iRacing, it's really hard to get that depth perception where I'm able to actually exit one corner and be looking at the apex. It's a little bit blurry. Here, we can see it's crystal clear. We're able to actually see until the next corner, which I really like. So after checking out all that footage of Automobilista 2, we can see that this is a great simulation game if you're trying to learn driving characteristics to apply towards your real life, or if you're going to do some track days, you can get some great practice ahead of time on this simulation game. For me personally, I enjoy it. I think I would probably use this over iRacing or Assetto Corsa. However, I'm gonna have to download it for my simulator, get some seat time on it, and see what I think about it. Once again, my name's Chris Nunes. I'm a professional driver for Mazda Motorsports, and you're able able to connect with me through my Instagram, which my social media tag is at Chris, the number 2, and then Nunes, Nunes. To check out some more episodes of Experts React, make sure to follow Gamology on Facebook and YouTube. I'll see you next time. I don't even know how to pronounce this game. Automobilista. All right, Automobilista. No, Automobilista. We're checking out Automobilista today. Automobilista 2. Gamologist. I like Gamologist, that's sick.